fellas, great to see you, Adam and James from the band Temples. I wanted to start off what was the point that kind of were you guys what jobs were you working before the band kind of took flight and got some momentum? Any notable funny jobs?
Plenty over the time, yeah.
I was studying at the time up north in Huddersfield. Then when I came back to join Temples. They'd had I think you had 4 songs beneath your belt at that point. But the worst job must have been a factory job in Kettering I had over where we're from over the summer. It was like charity clothes. So people in England stick them in a bag outside of your front door and people take them to a warehouse and sort through the charity stuff. But people donate the worst things you can probably imagine in there. They just throw soiled bedclothes and stuff, Lord. And other things that I just won't mention. But
no, so please do mention. Don't be shy.
All right. So there was this bloke who worked there who pulled out 7 dildos that were covered in feces.
No way.
And then he chased me and my mate Ricky around the factory. We were like 17, and he was in his 30s, and that was horrible. Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever? I mean, you got to worry about fleas and lice and stuff, I'm sure, huh?
We were wearing gloves, but
yeah,
that was mainly for the needles, So.
Yeah. Like protective, not like latex gloves, like full on armor war gloves.
Sort of. They were just they're more like gardening gloves, just leather, not even leather, probably fake leather. I don't know. But, yeah.
Damn. Yeah.
That was pretty gross.
It's pretty crazy. We have this store called Goodwill in Wisconsin in the States. And that people throw all kinds of people use it as a garbage service or a dumpster service, but also you can get amazing stuff in there as well. So yeah. I commend you for being on the front lines of secondhand thrifting. That's a great civil service.
I suppose so. I didn't think about that, at the time. Didn't feel like that. But
what about you, James?
Yeah, over the years I've definitely had jobs where it wasn't what I wanted to do. But prior to Temples, I was playing in bands, so I was trying to do the musician thing, just very unsuccessfully as far as I couldn't earn money off it. So I do part-time jobs, and I worked part-time in a school, a college, as a music technician, which was fun, but it was going back in time with some of the technology they had, and it was weird going back into a school environment after so many years and seeing how it's exactly the same, but also different as well. And there were some really naughty students. And I could empathize because I was one of them when I was in school. But at the same time, it pissed me off. And I was like, I can't believe these people, they don't give a shit about learning anything about this. They've chose to study music and they don't even care what I'm telling them. Yeah. But I guess I was like that at school, but not with music or art. I was like that in maths or history. I'd be a little bit of a annoying pest.
What was your biggest delinquent high school moment for you as a kid?
Oh, terrible one. On the last day of term before Christmas, we were all sort of having a joke around, and we have these fire alarms in England where it's you probably have it in America, where it's like a piece of thin glass, and the idea is if there's a fire that breaks out, you smash the glass with a little hammer. And we were playing a game which was who can knock it with their knuckle the hardest and be brave. And I did it, and of course it was me, and it smashed. The alarm went off. The whole school had to line up on the school playground, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds of students. But I just couldn't bear the guilt of it, so I went straight to the headmaster's office and said, "Look, it's a complete mistake. It's horrible. I'm really sorry. I mean, it was one of the worst experiences in my life at school. And the crazy thing is, my dad at the time was what you call like a retained fireman, which means that he'd work his day job as a chef, and then he'd be on like an alarm, like a pager.
Oh yeah,
that would kick in, through the night. But I don't know whether my memory's right here, whether he came or whether it was like his mates. But the fire brigade turned up because they have to, because the alarm sounds, tells them to come. And I had to explain that to my dad, and it was awful. It was, it probably explains my anxious disposition now.
Yeah, that's funny. There's this this foreign exchange student came to our high school. I forget where he was from, like Eastern Europe or something. And he was like, he's trying to figure it out. He kind of was like, he blew a lot of social cues, couldn't, kind of like pissed a lot of people off, and people were always irritated by him. It's hard, you're trying to fit in. But then he wrote a bomb threat on the bathroom mirror in deodorant, and he got everybody out of school a free day off, and he was like a legend after that. But then he got expelled, so he couldn't like really soak in his legend status. It was too bad.
He didn't think the plan through, did he? No.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he thought he'd get away with it, but I mean, his scene cred is better off for it. I don't really know what happens after you get expelled from like a shitty public high school, like where you go after that. I remember when I was in grade school, there was this pretty kooky kid. Had some mental wobbles, but he brought a knife to school because he was really into pro wrestling. But then he brought a knife to school, and he threatened to stab me with it, and then he got expelled. But they didn't even do anything. They just moved him to the other high school, which was seems kind of like light punishment. But I mean,
that's awful.
High school was full on. I don't know how it was for you guys in England, but for me over here, it was like pretty much like, I don't know, hopefully the closest I'll ever get to prison. It was a bit rough, a bit violent.
Yeah, it was pretty rough at mine. There was someone threatened to stab me at my school as well. And the first day of school, I saw a knife fight between two girls, which was pretty interesting. And,
wow.
Yeah.
How did that shake down?
Well, they both one of them whipped one out like a sort of butcher's knife thing, and they didn't actually they weren't sword fighting or whatever.
Yeah,
that's all I remember really. So it can't have been that bad, but enough to remember it.
That's big. I mean, England is like big on knives, hey? Is that something? Yeah. Is it just because you can't get guns, or what's the deal?
I don't know. It's pretty bad. Yeah.
In London, especially, they're constantly, fighting that fight as far as the police and trying to, stop the sort of gang mentality of like, it's just like a thing that's almost like been like learned behavior of like these gangs. I feel like, I don't know, because we're not a part of those kind of groups, but probably similar to in America with the gun thing. It's like if you sometimes would have to have a gun to protect yourself because someone else might have a gun, and I think maybe the knife things like that, especially in the big cities, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. I remember coming out of a gig in Camden late, and like, that feeling where you're just like your sketch radar goes off, and it just feels a bit like apocalyptic, and like you might be in a little bit of trouble. But we walked by the Poundland, which is what's Poundland? It's like a British dollar store.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Amazing. And then we walked past the McDonald's, and these two guys were just screaming at each other. Like, one was in the doorway of McDonald's. His buddies were like holding him back. And then the other guy was on the sidewalk, and he was like, "Come get some, motherfucker." And he pulled out this like mini ninja sword. And then they both had knives, and they were like, I ran away, but my buddy Thor thought it was pretty entertaining. So he was just standing there watching it. But Camden's hardcore in the wee hours, or maybe they cleaned it up. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right.
For a while.
Where did you guys start as a band in London, or were you in a smaller city?
A town called Kettering.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that was more beneficial than like starting in a saturated music metropolis like London? Did that play to your advantage?
I reckon it probably did. I mean, we've all been away to the city, at different points of our sort of like going uni and things like that. But I think what we did musically wasn't influenced by anything that was happening in a city, which is kind of has excluded us from being parts of any scenes, which I'm really happy that we're not a part of a particular scene. Whereas, in Birmingham, they had like the B-Town scene. When we first started, you had like bands like Swim Deep, Peace, Jaws. You had these bands that are all a part of like the Birmingham sort of bands. But we were just like, no one ever knew where we were from. Even when we told them, like, Kettering, where's that? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And you just say, it's where the Weetabix factory is, and they make shoes in sort of Kettering, like
the enemy
Park, that's it.
The enemy called it the arse end of nowhere, didn't they? Seem to remember on an early write-up.
It's fun to rep your hometown, though. I mean, it's like if you're like, hey, we're a band from London, like it's you and like a million other bands. But if you're a band from Kettering, you're like the band from there. So it's cool that you guys rep your hometown and rep it proudly.
Definitely. I mean, Adam and myself, we're not even that far from Kettering. Like now, like I've been in Kettering this morning because my parents still live there, and Adam's parents live there. Tom's parents live there. It's just one of those places. Growing up, it had a music scene. It didn't have like the band rivalry per se. Not when Temples came out. It did when I was probably like 18 or something. There was definitely bands a part of the Kettering scene. But you only ever played one place, like the Swan or the Prince, like these pubs. That's all you'd ever play. There isn't a venue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a part of our sound. I think it's undeniable really. It's whatever we grew up learning in that town has influenced our music to some degree.
Beautiful. What was the point where you like got on the rocket ship, so to speak, or like got attention and all of it? What was like the breaking moment for you guys where you started to get a lot of momentum and steam? What helped?
It's hard to say really, like the exact point, but I remember in 2012 Tom and me were in another band, and we'd played this gig at a place called Secret Garden Party, and we came off stage and we didn't have a good gig. We just decided that day that we were going to leave that band. And I had some songs that I'd been working on. I don't think I'd heard what Tom had been working on, but he said he had a couple of tunes. And we just came up with an imaginary cover for like an EP, and took that piece of artwork that was on the original upload, and then just uploaded it. And like we weren't in a band anymore. We just came up with a band name. We didn't have a drummer. We didn't have keyboard player or anything like that. And we just uploaded something on YouTube. And a friend of ours, this guy called Malky, Martin, what's his surname? That's terrible. Still owe him a bottle of champagne for being so lovely with us. But he just basically sent it to like a few of his friends, and some of them were like booking agents and stuff because he saw potential in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the real moment where it felt serious, because we had like people getting in touch with us, record labels and people, and we were going to Latitude. So it was Tom and his girlfriend at the time, me and my partner, and my fiance. We were going down to Latitude in Tom's old Beetle, and my phone just kept getting like texts and stuff, and it was like kind of a bit chaotic. And I was thinking, like, my mind was not with like going to a festival. I was like, I don't even want to be at a festival, like just watching bands, because I feel like we've got too many like loose ends to tie up with, a booking agent who wants to put us on at a show at, Green Man Festival. And that festival, I think that was the moment where it felt very serious, as in, this isn't just somebody going, can you play a gig for me at, my friend's wedding? This is like, no, we want to represent you as a band, And then I think it wasn't really until Adam and Sam joined, we put together basically like Kettering super group, because the first couple of gigs, our friend Jack from Liverpool, he was playing drums. And that got complicated early on because of all the traveling back and forth. And so we put together like a band, and, Adam we met in the pub, and we were just hoping that like he would be like into joining the band because we'd heard his music and we knew that it was coming from a similar place to ours. And I think when we all joined, when it was us four, that's when the band really felt like a band, even though we had songs that were released or like, out there. When we started going to gigs as like a gang, and it feeling like a gang.
Yeah.
So probably like something like one of the early London gigs, maybe like Barfly or something like that, would have felt, oh, wow, gosh, we've never played London before and this place is sold out, and it's quite a lot of pressure, but
yeah,
good
well, that's like a very, it's kind of like a classic old 80s, 90s music industry story / trajectory. Like you just make a cool demo tape, someone sends it to a couple people, and there's like a bidding war. That's kind of the dream, right?
It's amazing, especially when you think about it now. Like I work with some other bands, like producing and mixing and stuff, and they'll ask me, they'll go, oh, what's the trick for us, like, to maybe like get like more gigs and all this? And I just put my hands up and I'm like, do you know what? I just don't know anymore. Like, because it may as well be like, the Beatles, Rolling Stones era that I'm referencing when I talk about our early career, because it's so different,
It's kind of crazy. It's crazy to think about, like, today, if the Rolling Stones came out today, they would obviously be awesome, but it's actually relatively unlikely they would even remain a band for more than 3 years, just due to the way everything's set up now, the sheer quantity of songs, bands. It's like, there's no way they would get the same amount of attention. And if things didn't hit at the appropriate time, they, Mick Jagger might be working at Burger King. So it's weird to think about that. When you guys shopped your cassette around, what year was this? Was this a time when like the internet was still not at ultra hyper speed? Was it what year?
It was more like, it was 2012, wasn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was instead of a cassette, it was more, you put a few songs on YouTube, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was the internet, but
right.
There was no streaming.
Okay.
No
right
streaming.
Before streaming. Yeah. That seems like the maybe the last time that could have happened, of like, shopping and getting, who knows, but it's awesome that it popped for you. When you listen to those old, early songs you put out, do you listen back and are you like, wow, these are really cool? Like, we were young, still trying to figure it out, but we captured some sort of lightning in a bottle. I can see where people were interested. Or does it feel like we're way better than this? I don't relate to these at all.
I think it's different for everybody, but I tend not to look back on things and feel regretful about them. There's certain songs that maybe I feel like shouldn't go on albums that we've done, in retrospect, like there could have been better songs. But that first one, we kind of owe a lot to it. And, we don't want to just peddle that album. That's not the only thing that we've done. But, the first thing that a band releases that connects with people is always going to be a prominent thing, And it like, people always get defined by what they do first, you don't think about that when you're making it. So there's something always pure about a first record, especially if you do it where you've got the songs before you've got like record label interest. Because nowadays a lot of people will get like signed just because, I don't know, they can sing and they've got a look and there's some story they can create, and then they'll lock them away for 2 years with like multiple songwriters until they find their sound, and sometimes they don't, and then people get stuck and they can't go to another record label and they don't release any music. I've got friends that have done this, but what we did was just made music the same way that we've always made music, but I guess honed in on the sound of something more, because it's so, when you go in a studio for the first time, you expect to walk out with something that sounds like a world-class recording, and after about 4 experiences in a studio in previous bands, and realized I'm not getting what I want out of these studios, working with these engineers and these producers, because I feel like they're just ticking boxes. It wasn't, you wouldn't come out with something authentic. You'd come out with something that was almost like mathematical. It's like, oh, you do that, you do this, and then the record is done.
Yeah.
Whereas this was just like essentially faffing around, like, and not for hours and hours, just playing around with stuff and going, these drums sound good. They're like, they've got a vibe. Great, done, you know, and would actually like export the drums as a stereo mix. Like all of the drums on the first record, they're just stereo drums. There's no separate kick drum, no separate snare. Nice. So when Claudius mixed it, Claudius Mittendorfer, I remember saying to him, I was like, I'm sorry, but this is what you get. Like, you know, now we'd send separate files, and we don't have to, but you're aware of other things, like, oh yeah, but it's not going to sound as good on this format if we don't make the kick drum louder, you know, or these kind of silly little things. But
limitations are good, huh? I mean, limitations. I mean, all these old studio records we love. I mean, we could talk about the Stones again, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it just like the band playing live around a couple microphones?
Yeah. I mean,
early days.
Yeah, definitely. What inspired our early recordings was the whole Motown thing, and that's the same principle. It's like, you know, at most 3 mics on the drums, you know, and I mean, we didn't track live. That's the funny thing. It sounds like a band, but it's not a band. It's like, it's playing along to something as if you're playing live, you know. So the drums are always pretty much like laid down as like the foundation of the song. But I think the early stuff sounds kind of like a bit live and a bit like raw, but it's kind of, it gives you the impression of that, but it's very much not that. It's like building up like a dance track basically, but making it sound analog and making it sound like it could be like a lost Mamas and Papas song or something like that.
I mean, yeah, if you can nail that vintage aesthetic, and you guys have done that really well, it's really cool. I mean, you'd say the word Motown, the Motown beat, like the classic, like dak, 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 that's my favorite beat of all time. I think. Who's the drummer again? Adam, you're not the drummer, Adam, are you?
No.
You lead guitar player?
Like live rhythm and keyboards and a bit of backing vocals.
What's your favorite chord?
Favorite chord? Well, that's tough. You know, I guess it's easy to write like songs with major sevens. So I'll probably just say at the moment, major 7, any major 7. But it's also easy to fall into the trap of writing what everyone else would write over a major 7. So it's like, yeah, love-hate relationship.
Yeah. So when you guys got when things started picking up for you, and you know you're on the rocket ship, so to speak, obviously it's very exciting. Everything's happening. People are coming to the shows. They're sold out. People want to buy you drinks. How did your mental health? How was your mental health during that time?
It wasn't there, I don't think. It didn't fit. It all went so sort of fast for me anyway. Like it was like some sort of weird dream, you know.
Yeah, same. It's so easy to be like nostalgic, you know, like we do it all the time. We're like, oh, do you remember that gig that we did, you know, I don't know, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, when we first did that and sold that out in London. That was like our biggest gig. And that gig day was actually like, I've really got fond memories of it. But like when you've sat around basically all your life trying to be in a band, and then it happens for you. It's very cliche to say it, but like it's overwhelming, because you almost, you get like the imposter syndrome thing. Like you believe what you're doing is good, you know, because otherwise you wouldn't put it out, and you know you can play music, but like you think like it's like whether you can sort of handle the pressure of it. That's something that you don't learn as a musician. You don't learn about like the emotional pressure of it, or like, oh, today you're, you know, like we'd have a thing where we were like signing our first publishing deal, which is a huge thing as like as a songwriter, as, you know, somebody to sort of look out for your copyright and someone to look after your music. But we were doing that on like our one of our biggest headline gigs in the day. So we're like drinking champagne like at midday, and then you're like, yeah, but we've got to do a gig tonight as well. So like there's a part of you that just wants to like deal with it by just getting drunk, because it's easy to do that. But at the same time, you've got the pressure of like, oh, tonight's a sold out gig. And you'd have like lots of things happening in one day. Whereas you almost wanted to separate them. You wanted it to be like, we're going to go and sign the publishing deal then. And then the next day we have a gig. But you'd have these things where you're doing a photo shoot for like NME, and then you're doing this, and it's all in one day. And that culminated in going to South by Southwest and doing 12 shows in like 3 days. And I remember ringing Lauren, and this is really early on. This is like 2014. And I just said to Lauren, I was like, I don't want to do this. This is not fun. Like, because it was just incredibly stress inducing, because you got nowhere to hang out before the gig. You're like sitting there beside the stage, like putting all your shit on the stage, playing for like half an hour. And then you got to walk through the audience with all your stuff. And then you got to go and do it again. And some gigs are at 10 a.m. in the morning, some are at 2 in the morning. And you just, I don't know how anyone handles that, you know, other than, you know, maybe smoking weed. And, you know, even that's not going to help you do the gig, you know.
Yeah.
You might think it, but when you watch it back, you'd be like, yeah, man, I wasn't very good.
Yeah. And on top of that, I think it's important to note that, you know, you're down there schlepping it at South by Southwest. Most of the time you're not getting paid, or you're getting paid peanuts, or, you know, it's pretty meager. So yeah, I mean, I think these things are like, can be tough to express out loud, because it's like playing music it's like the coolest job. But yeah, and the grind of it is often kind of under a veil or behind a curtain. And that's kind of why I wanted to do the podcast, is because it's like, yeah, people like to go see bands, but what happens off stage, like between shows, like the unglorious side of things is something that's always interested me. And it's like drawn me to writers like Henry Rollins. I'm sure you guys have read some of his stuff, who just kind of talks about like the grime and the crusty, sleepy backwater of playing music, and how like it's only glorious like 3% of the time, which is something I relate to so much. And one thing I wanted to ask you guys is like early shows, or like moments like this where we're kind of on the subject already, but moments where you thought like, this is brutal, this is not for me, or maybe I chose the wrong path. Anything like that, like existential crises moments or horrible gigs?
Yeah, like so many for me personally, but there's also many, like the ones that stick in your mind are the brilliant ones and the really shit ones, and then there's ones that are just good. But like the ones that are kind of feel a bit more traumatic are the ones that you'd think about in this scenario. You know, many times where Sam, who's the drummer for us, you know, since 2014 till 2018.
Yeah,
18.
I can't remember.
Many stressful moments of him not turning up for things, or turning up like 2 minutes before a gig, wasted, you know. And we've all burnt the candle at the wrong end, well, at both ends, and fucked up gigs because of it. But yeah, we missed flights. We did a show in Paris, and yeah, we didn't hear from Sam, bless him, for like 24 hours. Like we had like something in Paris and then a gig, the headline show the next day, and we just couldn't get hold of him. So one of the in-house roadies at the venue played drums in sound check so we could just get the volumes and stuff. And he turned up like 5 minutes before, like, and I met him out the front, like near the queue. And you know, and he was very quiet, but that many experiences like that, you know, where it just feels a little bit unhinged. You're like, oh, surely we should all be in the dressing room right now, listening to music and getting ready for the gig, not stressing about whether all of us are going to be on stage. You know? That's
a rock and roll cliche right there, fellas.
It is, I know. That's
was it booze induced?
I mean, I can't speak on his part, but but there was, you know, often there'd be drink involved, but there kind of always is with bands, you know, unless you go down the route of being like teetotal, which you can see why people do that, because maybe people will be more reliable, you know. Not always, but
yeah. Well, not to go too personal with it, but was the getting a new drummer, was that like a kind of a holy shit kind of cinematic breakup kind of moment?
It all happened quite fast, actually. Yeah. But again, it's sort of hard to remember, but it does seem to run quite a lot smoothly now. And,
good. Well, good to hear. Yeah.
And
there's no like,
there's
no like hard feelings or anything like.
No, not at all.
And Sam knows this. I mean, he was at your stag do, wasn't he? So we chatted about it, and but like, yeah, like Ren's is very, very different. Like, you know, in that sort of way. Like, he's not a big drinker or anything, and I don't want to say that Sam's a big drinker, but you know, he kind of was. So like that, and that's kind of a fact. So like, I don't want to you know, do you know what I mean? I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah,
but Ren's, yeah, like I think at first it took us by surprise, because we were so used to having that feeling of, oh, well, are we going to be ready for the gig, you know? And we didn't have that with Ren. So which is amazing, but that was an adjustment, which just goes to show how much you probably get used to a certain way of working, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there what about, like, did you ever play any like, what's the weirdest venue you played? You must have played like some unconventional places. You play a I don't know, a helicopter launch pad, or I don't know, like, give me a butcher shop, anything?
Nothing quite as exciting as either of those, I'd imagine. The one, I mean, yeah, this isn't like a great story or anything, but we played a swimming pool once, which was it was just like the most reverberant place ever, and our music has quite a lot of reverb on already, so I can't imagine how the audience must have heard anything. But seem to remember that one. I think it was in Switzerland somewhere.
It was an emptied out. It was a indoor swimming centre, and they had a pool where people were swimming, but they'd emptied out a pool. So then everyone was standing in this big pool, like an Olympic-sized pool, probably.
Nice.
And then the stage was, you were just up on, you know, the top of the pool. But we went for a swim before in the pool next door, which that as well seemed like a good idea. And then it's like, it's a vibe killer when you're like in your pants, like, and there's fans there, and you're just like, and you know, you don't have a beach physique, and suddenly you feel, you're like, oh, and then we're gonna go and get changed and put on our glamorous stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And you've already seen us in some speedos. You know? So I think we were in the pool for all of, you know, 5 minutes maybe.
That's an interesting thought, because I think all bands have to think about that, as like, how much mystique do you maintain? How much do you hang out? Do you hang out before shows? Do you go shake hands, or do you just kind of lay low, come out for the show, disappear? Maybe you don't even appear at the merch table. And that's something I gave up a long time ago. I was like, we're kind of like a dorky 90s influenced kind of geek rock band from Wisconsin in the Rust Belt of America. You know, we play a lot of small places too. So it's like, well, we're just gonna dress like, you know, respectable, but we'll dress like we dress, and we're not that cool. And you might see us in our underpants before the show. Like, we played in Madison last summer, and we just all went swimming in the lake because the lake was right next to the stage, and it was the same sort of situation. But you know, I think I am a bit jealous of those bands that can, instead of retreating to a van, they go straight on a tour bus, or have a great green room. And that's always just something I always say, I never want to sit on a tour bus, because I never want to like feel that sort of luxury and get used to it. Because like, once you level up in luxury, it's like impossible to go in reverse. So yeah, just keeping it low to the ground and DIY and blue collar. I think I keep my expectations within reason, you know.
I think that sounds good. The only time we've had buses before in the US, but yeah, we wouldn't sort of have one around here. But they have been good. You know, they are fun. but you do get used to it. You're right. And
You got like a Nintendo and stuff. What's the layout?
we were playing some FIFA on whatever console it was, and you had the fridge, you know, and there's lots of beers, and it's good. It's good fun, you know. But yeah, you get used to it, and then you have to go back to the van or whatever, and yeah, it's sort of less enjoyable. But
Oh, FIFA on Nintendo. That just struck a memory. Did you guys have? Were you of the Sega Genesis era
yeah,
of video games? Nice. Yeah, we had FIFA '95, and I remember like getting into just heated FIFA matches with my little brother. You remember that era where you would just get so upset you would just slam a controller against the cupboard? Maybe not. I think I had some mental health issues, but what about any early on like grinding it? Any hilarious like worst road meals or anything like that?
road meals. I remember once I said to myself, I think we were going from Kettering up to Glasgow, and I had like a vegetable samosa that you can get in like the corner shop. They're really good, like pre-packaged ones, but they're the good ones. £1 they are. And I thought, well, I'll make this samosa last the whole journey, which is a good 6.5, 7 hours or something. And I think one of you even noticed it, or I told you I was doing it, and it took me 7 hours to eat this thing, and it was actually one of the best meals I've ever had. I was absolutely stuffed after it.
Yeah, vegetable samosas that's a great road snack.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, we don't have that in the States because England, you guys have that like massive kind of Eastern and Indian food influence. So can you just can you get those at every rest stop?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah. They're cold. They're in like the refrigerated section, but they're still good. And
wow.
Sometimes crispy if you're lucky. Depends which one, you know, depends which one you get.
Did you say Fun Times Crispy? Is that the brand? It'd be a good brand name.
Sometimes.
Fun Times Crispy samosas. Yeah, I think America is in a bad way for road food right now. And you guys have seen this where it's like the most healthy option is like microwave sandwiches at Starbucks, you know? I mean, if you want to eat a vegetable, you have to like, you know, drive off the highway, find a grocery store. And if you're in like the Rust Belt or the middle of America, I mean, there's no way you're seeing any food that's the color green, you know? It's like donuts, cheeseburgers, just vats of gravy, fries, Wendy's. So
we pretty much on the American tours, like on the big drives, if we stop at like a gas station, it'll be like the jalapeno kettle chips or something. Oh yeah,
you don't get them over here.
You don't get them, yeah. And I mean, they're not healthy, but the packaging's got a bit of green on it, so it's slightly healthy. Yeah.
They're so good. I really wish we had them over here, but yeah.
Well, that makes me feel better. Tell me more. What else do you like about America roadside attractions and food?
The prices of cigarettes is incredibly cheap. Obviously, state to state it's different, but compared to England, that's obviously appealing.
What's a pack of cigarettes in England?
Now what, like 18 quid?
What? Holy
something like that, in it for 20.
Is it?
It's about or something like that. But then they don't do rolling tobacco very well. I don't think it's all very dry. But I don't know. Like, we don't really sample any of the food there because we're all like veggie and vegan. So like, there's we don't want like a corn dog or anything like that. So like, if you see a Subway, you're like, right, at least we can have some vegetables in this.
Salad sandwich. Yeah.
There you go.
But what's the place that we always look forward to? And what was that place called? Like Native Foods that we used to go to in Chicago.
Chicago, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was before like veggie food was like exciting over in England. Like it was pretty much like there wasn't much stuff. And we had some like Cajun chicken style thing, and I remember us just being there. It was like a friend in Chicago who took us, and it was just like the best meal ever, because you'd sort of just been traveling and you just want something that's like a bit naughty but also like good,
with some broccoli as well,
Yeah.
Oh, and root beer in America. I mean, we have it over here, but not really, and not in nice frosted glasses and stuff. So So I do enjoy getting one of those at a gas
Hey,
station.
AW.
Respect. Yeah. Crispy fun times goodness. Yeah, it's crazy to hear cigarettes are $18 a pack. I don't smoke them very often, but I was just down in Mexico and I think they're like $2 a pack. So it's a great place to start chain smoking. Anyone out there is thinking about starting, just get on it. Well, what's next for you fellas? Like what's next for you outside of music? Like what keeps you balanced mentally? What keeps you pumped up and what keeps you not burnt out?
Walking a lot. I've just come back from a walk out in the countryside, and after moving, me and my wife only moved up here like a year and a half ago or something. We were in Brighton and London before then, so it's so nice to be out here. It's a 2-minute walk and you're out in it's sort of like agricultural land, rural land, and walking out there it does me a lot of favors mentally.
What's that adjustment like, being a city man all your life and then all of a sudden time kind of must feel like it stands still in the country?
To be fair, I much prefer the country. So even when we were in London, we were in parts of London where there was a lot of greenery. So I'd always find myself, by the river or in the park or something. So it's actually, I think it's always been like that for me.
You've just felt, since you moved out there, you've just felt your mental health to be a lot better too?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, James?
I'd say similar. Yeah. Walking the dog. I've got like a lake that's just 5 minutes over there, which is it's like private property. So you shouldn't really walk there, but because you live in the village, you can kind of sometimes, they're okay. But it means that you don't get like cyclists and other people there, so it's incredibly quiet, which is really nice. But I'd say similar to Adam, like, city life isn't for me. Like, and when we tour, you get like city life, and the last thing I'd want is to come back and like be living next to a music venue. Like it'd be seriously annoying. But yeah, that and just faffing around with trying to fix my old car.
Man, much respect for having car mechanic skills. Like, was that something that's always been in your blood, or did you develop that later on?
The love of like old cars, as I've always been fond of like old British sports cars. But like through lockdown really is when I started sort of learning about how it works. Do you know what I mean? Like, for the first car I ever had, was only, it's probably like about 6 years ago. I only learnt to drive like later on, and I didn't even lift up the bonnet. I didn't even know, like, I had no intention of caring about how shit worked. But I soon realised that if you're going to have like an old car, it helps to know how it works. In the same way it helps to know how to fix a bit of guitar stuff, or like put your own strings on. Otherwise you're just on the phone to like garages all the time because they go wrong a lot. But yeah, so it's been, I've bought like handbooks, and like the other day I was like underneath the car with like oil pissing on my face, and I was thinking, this is not, I'm sure, what's his name, from Pink Floyd, who's a big car enthusiast. What's his name?
Roger Waters?
No, the drummer.
Clive Owen? I don't know.
Why can't I think of his name either?
Anyway, he's like, he loves like old Ferraris and stuff, like expensive stuff. But I bet he probably is on his back underneath it, because he's not doing any gigs. But yeah, no, I find that quite cathartic. Like, I've always liked doing stuff with my hands, like with, obviously music is a very tactile thing, but like growing up I'd like to do like carpentry, and we live in like a really old house, so I've had to learn bits around the house as well. It's laying floors and like putting tiles on the walls, and anything that means I haven't got to pay someone to do it.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's a I think it's an important feeling, especially as you play music and you're kind of in this, you know, artistic world and ethereal world. It's like you want to prove to yourself you still have these like you know, quote unquote medieval skills or whatever to make shit happen or create or fix things in the physical world. And I'm a man with no carpentry skills, very few handyman skills, if any. But I mean, just like a couple weeks ago, like my drain was clogged in the bathroom. I snaked the drain. Like I've never felt so proud of myself and so good for like just pulling out like a pound of pubes from the drain. Like just dirty, not impressive work, but it, you know, it feels good. It's like, all right, I accomplished something tactile today.
It's a very different feeling to, you know, the achievement of playing a banging set of music. You know, that's a very different accomplishment feeling, you know. And like you say, like almost like the least glamorous job that you fix, you know, whether it's you pulling out a load of pubes from your drain, it puts you in touch, with like that sort of back to basics thing, you know, that you don't get from social media or, you know, and like the funny thing is, obviously I would have looked online for advice of how to do these things, you know, like laying a floor or whatever. So, but using it and then practically putting it to use, I find really rewarding. What I don't like is just watching videos on how to do something and then not doing it, because then I haven't learned anything, you know. I can tell someone how to do it, but like because I've watched a video, not because I've done it, you know.
I mean, things that you can learn anything now. I think, man, almost anything is possible. I think the thing that we all just shoot ourselves in the foot is like, we all have some sort of shiny object syndrome where it's like, it's hard to watch a 5-minute tutorial on YouTube because there's a million other things to do. You know, you got Spotify, you got Netflix, you can do all these things. So I think in this day and age, if you just have like a tiny bit of discipline to just sit through, learn a thing, even if it's 10 minutes, it's wildly rewarding, and it gets you out of this kind of hyperspeed treadmill we're all on, where we post things on social media, and it's like this illusion of progress. It's like, wow, I just did something, I posted a video, but it's not progress. You know, fixing your car is progress. You know, if the zombie apocalypse comes, like some think, you know, you're going to be ranked way higher on the social totem pole than I am. I mean, you can fix a car, you know, it's it's a good feeling. So
definitely.
The only trouble is though, the car always breaks, isn't it? So it's,
That is true.
If there was a zombie apocalypse, it might not start, and you know.
Yeah, you got to learn how to ride a horse and shoot a bow and arrow and shit. And we're all fucked, whatever.
Then I could siphon the fuel out of the fuel tank and put it in glass bottles, and then I've got like bombs that I can throw. You know,
Molotov cocktails. You can if you can siphon, you're gonna be big. Well, you guys are a great fucking hang. I hope to meet you in real life at some point. Really appreciate you coming on here. Yeah, please come to the States, come to Wisconsin. I'll keep an eye out for you guys, and I'll give you a shout. We'll cross paths in reality at some point.
That'll be nice.
We'll be over, I think, this year. We're just trying to budget a tour bus.
Brilliant. Yeah. All right. Well, don't get too used to it. Much love, dudes.
All right, cheers.